What, Claire? I'm so happy you're here in the space in between. How are
Yeah,
you?
it's lovely to be here. Thank you. I'm really good. Thank you.
Good. You know, it's funny. You've been inside of the nOMad Collective for a year and a half, right?
Hmm.
And you're one of our sage guides. And I feel, you're on the calls really regularly, but I actually haven't had an actual sit down and just like get to know Claire. It's always just very focused on the task at hand. So I'm really excited about this conversation because I know a little bit about what you do, but I don't necessarily know the journey or the
Mm.
why. So I'd love to hear that. And for my own personal well-being, but also for everyone who's out here listening and introducing you to the world. So, okay, let's just start there. Who are you and where are you
Who
in the
am
world? Yeah.
I? Who am I? Gosh, when somebody asks me that question, I'm always like, I don't want to lead with what I do because what I do is not who I am. It's like a
Mhm.
tiny little facet, isn't it? And I
Mhm.
think we get almost conditioned into leading with that. But yeah, so I'm a mother. I've got two adult children. I'm a wife. Um, I am a runner. I love running. I'm also at the moment, as you know, studying yoga, transpersonal yoga, which is amazing. I'm really enjoying that. And my work, I've always worked in the helping professions and supporting people. So, and that's been an unfolding, I would say, over the years. So something that has changed shape, and the way that I hold space for people, and even the therapies and the modalities that I use has changed a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, when I first left uni, I was a physiotherapist and I worked in a hospital here in England. And I did that for about 6 years. And then I went into private practice. Um, and I did that for a couple of years. And then I had my first son and went back, had my second son. And then I did a master's degree in health ergonomics, and I decided that I was going to set up my own business then. So, still in private practice, but working for myself. And that was a journey and a half because, when you first start your own business, wow, it's kind of like a baptism of fire, isn't it? It's like all
Mhm.
these things that you didn't know that suddenly you need to know. So I kind of went on this really steep learning curve for a while and had a really successful physio business for quite a long time and managed to expand and had a few people working for me. And I was really happy. And I thought, oh, I've got all my life figured out. It's going really well. And then I became really ill
Mhm.
because I was doing a lot of exercise. I progressed from just being kind of like a casual runner into deciding that I was going to run a marathon. And then that um, transformed into me going into triathlons. And I became this Ironman triathlete.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have this very hard work ethic, this very kind of like, if you're going to do something, then you do it. And people often say to me, "Oh, that's really, that's really great," but actually, it's not always really great because
Mhm.
at the time, what I didn't realize was I was outsourcing a lot of my agency to like coaches and nutritionists and different people, and I wasn't actually listening to my body.
Mhm.
And it was ironic because here I was, this physiotherapist that was teaching people how to look after their bodies and not become injured. And I was doing the exact opposite, but I
Mhm.
couldn't see that. And so I overtrained, I became really unwell to the point that I couldn't exercise. And then everything kind of fell apart. And I went through this huge dark night of the soul process that lasted a few years. It was really, really difficult,
Mhm.
but I needed to go through it. And when I look back now, I'm like, that is the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I
Mhm.
would never be where I am now. I would never have learned the things that I've learned both internally about myself, but also the different skills and modalities that I then went on to learn. And so it really opened me up to a different way of being and perceiving myself and the world and other people. And I found myself on this journey of, first of all, alternative health because I was getting frustrated with feeling very unwell and not being validated for that. You know, I'd go to the doctor and they would say to me, "Oh, but you're in your 40s and you can run marathons and do Ironman. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just having a bit of a flat week. It's just because you've got children and just rest a bit and you'll be fine." And that it sort of triggered me to go and study nutritional therapy. And when I did that, I healed quite a lot of my issues. I became a lot healthier, but there was still something. And it was during this process that I began to think about how our bodies speak to us. And one day I can't remember what I was doing, but I suddenly went, I remember having going swimming and having tennis elbow and thinking, oh, it's because I've been swimming too much. And at the same time, I'd had these digestive issues. It was right at the beginning of when I started to feel unwell. When I was reflecting on this, I was kind of like, oh, well, of course I was, because, that is the large intestine meridian that's connected to my digestion, which also sits around like the solar plexus area, the pathway. And um, I was kind of like, oh, my body was telling me to slow down. And I had huge imposter syndrome at this time because I'd qualified for the World Championships, the Ironman Championships in Hawaii. And I just didn't feel like I should be going, that I was good enough, that I deserved to go. And it all fitted. When I sat there, I was like, this is so obvious. How did I not see this? And then I'd had this ability when I was a physio to recognize patterns in my clients. So people would come with back pain, and they'd have certain things that were in the background, huge sense of responsibility, for example, and stress around resources. And I was kind of like, oh, I could see that in other people, but I couldn't see what was happening in myself. This is this is a huge wake-up call. And that then inspired me to go and study medical intuition with my wonderful friend Emma Turton, who's in Australia. And that training literally changed my life because I just was able to completely slow down and start to really get these big aha moments about my own life and my own body. And then I studied transpersonal psychology, and that's when I started to study and learn about archetypes. And that's then the road that I kind of mainly focused on, was because that fitted with the patterns, certain, I suppose, archetypes presenting physically in people's bodies through their postures and also through symptoms and their behavior. And that's now how I support people, is I help people to understand all of the parts of themselves, including the parts that they don't really want to look at. So, some people call that shadow work, some people call it inner work. And it's got this, I think it's got a bit of a stereotypical, what should I call it? It seems to be this kind of stereotypical lens. I think a lot of people think of shadow workers going in and doing this awful, deep, painful stuff that's really horrible and it's really scary. And actually, it's not like that at all. It's so liberating and freeing. And that's what I love helping people with. It's helping people to understand themselves better so they can meet themselves with compassion, and acceptance. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you shared so much that I was like, okay, I have so many questions along the way. Just first of all, thank you for sharing a bit of your journey. And I had no idea that that was how intense your physical practice and training was at that time. I didn't realize that. I've seen pictures of you and you're like ripped, and I was like, oh yes, okay. But now it makes sense. But so I want to definitely go into that journey a little bit more, but even just like hearing so many of your accreditations, right? And I would love to just share a little bit more about like what did you say, health ergonomics?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and what,
ergonomics,
yeah.
yeah. So ergonomics basically is learning how to make the environment fit to the person rather than the person
Mm,
fit to the environment. So
love
a
that.
lot of people understand this as things like um, health and safety or manual handling or desktop assessments where you go in and you make sure your computer's at the correct height so that you're not your arms aren't up here or you're not crouching down, but
Yeah,
literally it covers anything. It can cover um, people working in nuclear reactors. It can cover computer coding, the product design, anything
okay.
at all. So you're literally looking at things and going, right, how can we make this easier for the person rather than the person having to struggle to work
Yeah.
with the thing? Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one that came through, and I've heard a bit about, and I think that's where we're going to sit for a little while, is this idea of the medical intuitive. And you were just sharing a little bit about your story of like you starting to recognize these patterns and how things are all connected. But for somebody who isn't as connected as you and maybe sitting there like, oh my God, I've had these stomach issues for so many years or whatever, what would that look like if they came and experienced a session with you with using this practice of medical intuition?
Yeah, so medical intuition, as I was taught it, and as I do it as a standalone
Mhm.
modality, somebody comes and they usually tell me why they're coming. But so, I've had before where people just book in and they haven't told me, and
Mm,
so it can take on a couple of different formats. One is typically where you connect with the person's energy and you're picking up things from them. So
mhm,
for me, I feel things often, but I often will know things. And then it's having a conversation about what I'm picking up and
mm,
helping the person to navigate through that. Or sometimes the person comes and they will just start kind of telling me about their history. And then in
mhm,
my mind, I'm going, oh, yeah, okay, so they were in this archetypal pattern, and this is the manifestation of it, and this is happening. And
mhm,
then I might ask a few questions around that, and then we have a conversation. So it's really helping people to understand that illness starts out here in the energetic body, and then the longer we are maybe engaged in a pattern that's not benefiting us or a behavior that's not benefiting us, the denser it becomes until it eventually shows up as this physical symptom in our body. Because that's the way
mhm.
that we hopefully then take notice and make a change so that the symptom then reduces and resolves.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you probably have studied the work of Joe Dispenza too, but when I got to go to his retreat last year, he talked about this study. It was like in 1940s. I don't remember the name of the scientist, but he was studying the electromagnetic field of women who had the pattern of ovarian cancer. And what he was seeing was that there was a specific pattern in their field, but then he was following women who had the same pattern but didn't have ovarian cancer and followed them into their, into their future, and they ended up having ovarian cancer. And so
Wow.
it was like basically saying exactly what you're saying. But that was like such a huge light bulb moment for me too. But I'm wondering too, like for you, when you're speaking about when people come and talk to you, it sounds like you're claircognizant and clairsentient, right? You're like feeling things and you just know things. But for
Hmm.
other people, like who are in your position, are they getting like, are they hearing, like, are they more like,
Yeah,
are there other
yeah.
their abilities? Can you
Yeah,
speak
yeah,
a bit to?
yeah. So if I recall, and I don't want to speak for her directly, but I'm pretty sure that Emma, my teacher,
Mm.
is very clairvoyant. I think she gets really strong images, and she's phenomenal, actually. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm very similar to you. Like I feel sensations in my body
Hmm.
and it's like, ooh, okay, then the
Yeah,
story unfolds. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So, and then to go back into your story, because I'm fascinated by everybody's space in between, right? This is the name of the podcast, is the space in between. Is this moment? It sounds like there was this invitation. You were in some sort of dis-ease, right? Not
Hmm.
necessarily full-blown dis-ease, but your body was not settled. It was not in
Mm.
place. And so you were listening to these signs and you were starting to have these connections. And I resonate with your story too, because here you are, this person who's doing these triathlons, you're physically fit, you're also doing the intuitive work and these other modalities. And then all of a sudden you had this like imposter syndrome, you said, and like shame and like there. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit more? Because that's something I've definitely been unpacking too, going through my cancer journey and
Yeah,
other healers out there. It's more of like what I love what you said was it's almost like an invitation rather than
yeah,
going into victimhood. It's like this
yeah,
opening. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
yeah. So I think that what happened was I was just I was on the wrong path. And it was kind of like, you're not listening, you're not listening, you're not listening. We're going to make you listen.
Yeah.
And literally, so I was really fatigued,
Mhm.
but I wasn't resting, which
Mhm.
is crazy. When I think about that now, I'm thinking, why did I not just rest?
Mhm.
And again, that was because I had this like inner perfectionist, this imposter that needed to keep going and to prove herself and to, achieve and finish what I'd started, even though I was so tired and I was really depressed. So I
Mhm.
wasn't even enjoying exercising. I was kind of doing it because I was telling myself I had to, which
Mhm.
again is a story that was just like, but I never challenged it. I never said, hang on, is this true? Do I really have to? Has somebody got a gun to my head? Well, what will happen if I rest?
Mhm.
And so I had all these stories that I was listening to, and I just think that sometimes when we're on this path, something happens to try and redirect us because when we're redirected, life after that is going to look very different and probably better
Mhm.
after the bumps in the road. Um, but it took me a while, even I even tried to keep exercising the way that I was, but to a lesser extent for about a year after. And then one day I was just like, why am I doing this? I'm not even enjoying it. And I remember I did a tiny bit of yoga, but not much. And all these people kept saying to me, you should just give it up and do some yoga. And I kept going, oh no, just like, and even now that makes me laugh because I really love yoga.
Mhm.
And
You thought
because
you were selling out? You're
well,
like, oh, that's the easy way.
and it was just like I don't know. And I remember I was walking in the marathon part of the Ironman in Hawaii, and I was with a lady from America, so we kind of joined forces on the marathon. We were supporting each other, and the sky is so black in parts because there's no lights. You're walking down this highway with no lights, and or you're running if you
Yeah.
and I was walking, and I just remember I looked up at the stars, and that I could see like the Milky Way. I could see, and honestly, it took my breath away. And I just said out loud, I am never going to do another one of these. And I really meant it.
Mm.
And I had another two booked for the following year. So that's why I kind of thought, oh, I'll just keep trying, I'll be okay. But I never did another one. And I always think about that and how I spoke it out with real intention, like I really meant it. And
Yeah,
it
I
was
just got full
just,
body chills for you.
yeah, yeah. It was just like, wow, I just felt like this is it. And actually, I'm not supposed to be doing this. What am I doing? I'm just harming myself. Um, and then, of course, when things started to fall away, I did fall into that sort of victim mode because, I just want to say here that I have also a strong belief that there are certain archetypal patterns like the victim and the addict that are really misunderstood.
Mhm.
And people feel a lot of shame for being in those patterns. But the victim in particular is really important to us because, that victim part of us actually helps us to weigh at risk and keep us safe. And if we didn't have it, we'd be really gung ho.
Yeah.
The shadow side of it is that we can stay in that, and then we feel really kind of entitled and sorry for ourselves, and we lose our sense of responsibility and believe that other people should be making our life easier, and that we're helpless. And I kind of, I don't think I went into that very much for very long, because I was actively trying to sort of like, right, let me try this modality to help my health. Okay, that's working. I'm going to stick with that, but I'm going to also add this in. So, but I definitely went through a kind of like, oh, well, my physio business is collapsing, and who am I now? Because I was this physiotherapist that was a triathlete, and that was my identity, which is why when you said tell us who you are, I kind of like
Yeah,
laughed internally, because I'm like, well, who we think we are is never who we really are, is it? It's just
I
these
know.
constructs. Um, and so it was a bit scary, because I was kind of like, well, who am I now? What? Well, I'm still a mum. I know I'm still a mum. I know I'm still a wife. I know I'm still someone's daughter. And let's just get through each day and see what happens.
Mhm.
And I couldn't, I didn't even know the path ahead at that time, because I hadn't started studying medical intuition. I was studying nutritional therapy. Um, but there was something in that course, nutritional therapy, that made me go, oh no, there's something more to this.
Mm.
And I think it's because when I was studying it, part of the model that they teach, the functional medicine model, talks about one of the pillars being somebody having a faith or spiritual beliefs. And this is deemed quite important to people on their health journey. And, there's research that shows if people have this spiritual belief or a faith in something greater than themselves, then that actually supports their healing. And
Mhm.
yet, within the course that I learned, it was very scientific and evidence based. So this was mentioned, but it was never explored. And I was kind of
Mhm.
like, well, hang on, why aren't we going into this? Because I know this really matters. Like this is really important to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I kind of went down that road. Yeah.
Okay, so you said something interesting. I love to go back to it because you were speaking about the victim,
Hmm.
which you played that role for a moment, and I've definitely been in that role
Hmm.
too. I think all of us can relate to that in some way, but you
Yeah.
also spoke to the addict, and I was like, oh, wait, I want to know more about this because when I was hearing you, I could definitely identify myself in the past taking on the role of the addict, where I've always said, oh, I'm not like addicted to anything because I never did some substances or anything like that. But I had a teacher, one of my yoga teachers, very early on. She said, oh, Phoebe, you're a sensation junkie. And I was like, I don't know what that means. But I think as healers, and especially like personal development, we become
Hmm.
addicted to the self-improvement, right? And that's
Right.
kind of what you were doing in the physical realm, and
Yeah.
then you were doing it in the education realm. So I'd just love to hear a little bit more with the archetypes, like you were speaking, like
Yeah.
that connection. If there's a, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, well, we all have every archetype. So whenever
yeah,
anybody says, "Oh, I'm not an addict," I'm kind of like,
right,
"Well,
right.
you might not think you are."
There's
And
one
you
in
can,
there. There's one in there. Yeah.
even repetitive thought loops are an addiction.
Yeah.
And, some of the small habits that we have are an addiction. But
Mm,
again, we've been conditioned that, being an addict is like it's a dirty word. Nobody wants to be an addict. So it's pushed into the collective shadow. So we put it into our personal shadow. We don't want to go there. But yeah, I was properly addicted to exercise. And I loved the high that I got from it. It made me feel really strong until it didn't.
mhm,
Um, and I think it's just a really misunderstood archetype. Like one of my teachers that I studied archetypes did a lot of his courses, Robert O'Hotto. I used to be in his membership, and he always spoke about how the addict and the mystic were kind of like opposite sides of the coin, and that the mystic is here to feel life. And
mhm,
it's when people can't feel, they can't bear to feel the pain, they can't bear to feel the suffering, they often tip into the addict to try and numb it out and to escape. And that just makes perfect sense to me, because I'm like,
mhm,
well, of course, this is why we engage in these patterns to try and self-soothe because we
Mm.
don't we don't want to be where we are. Even if where we are isn't particularly painful, it might we might just not, you know, be stimulated by it, or we might be bored of normal everyday life, but we're avoiding something.
Mm.
And so I just think that it gets a really bad rap,
Mhm.
the addict, and I yeah.
Mm. Yeah, for me personally, my father was an addict. He was
Hmm.
like a very hard drugs addict. So there was that storyline of having to, shun that outside. But when you're speaking to it and knowing who you are and knowing that you're a hard worker, and me too, and most of the people inside of our nOMad collective, we are, I always joke, recovering perfectionists.
Hmm.
And there's something to that. I'd love to unpack that a little bit more of like, um, what did that look like for you? Not just that moment of looking up at the stars during that experience and saying, I'm not doing this anymore. What did that look like after, as you started to detangle yourself from the addiction of the physical practice and making these realizations?
I mean, it was hard
Yeah.
because I was kind of like, okay, so I'm used to going out on my bike for 4 hours on Saturday and running for 2 hours on Sunday and doing
Yeah.
this for an hour and what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I had all this time and I was kind of like, well, actually, I'm not in a very good space to do anything, and I just need to be and
Hmm.
to rest and to just be with myself and to feel what I'm feeling rather than trying to avoid it.
Hmm.
So it wasn't pleasant for a while, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, one day I was driving my car and I went, I feel a bit optimistic today. And literally, it was like this cloud had just all of a sudden moved away from my head, and I could start to sort of see things again.
Hmm.
It was so bizarre. It was like, honestly, it was literally like that. Like
Hmm.
all of a sudden, something went, and I could start to, because when I was at my worst point, it was like being wrapped in a ball of cotton wool. Um, and so I couldn't really feel anything other
Hmm.
than I feel flat,
Hmm.
and heavy. And so I could smile and I could laugh, but I didn't feel joy and I couldn't find any glimmers in the day, no matter how much I tried. And then all of a sudden, when this thing lifted, I was like, ah, okay, I can start to feel these things again. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think, and not all, but do you think that us as healers are hiding from our own healing by healing others? Is that a way of?
Not always. I think sometimes people get stuck in the wounded healer in the
Hmm.
shadow, and then I think, yeah, because that's a distraction, I'll focus on other people so I don't have to focus on myself.
Yeah.
But I also believe that the wounded healer makes the best healer when
Hmm.
we're in the light side of it and we can integrate it. So, it might not mean that we're fully healed. When are we ever fully healed? It's a journey, but I think it's owning that we're not fully healed and we're doing the work ourselves so that
Hmm.
we can help other people do the work. I think there's two kind of groups. So I do see some people and they're not doing the work themselves, but they're learning modalities and doing training and then offering this out
Hmm.
rather than actually kind of working on themselves as well. And I
Yeah.
think I think that's the difference.
Yeah. What are some of the, I mean, you spoke to it already, but what does it look like for I'll call like an integrated wounded healer? What does that look like externally, but what does it also feel like internally? So if someone's out there listening, like, where am I at on the spectrum? Like, what does that feel for you?
It's definitely somebody that is aware of their wounds and how they are either reacting from them or how they have reacted from them, and they're actively addressing those. So they're not afraid to own them. and they're not afraid to say, actually, I understand because this is also what I do, and this is how I'm trying to accept this part of myself, and this is what I'm trying to do to work through it. Most of our wounds, all of our wounds come from the relationships we have with people,
Mhm.
not necessarily our familial or romantic relationships, but just in relationships. And I think people often overlook the fact that to fully heal, it requires relational dynamics. You have to heal with another person. So whether that's with therapy or coaching or counseling or movement or whatever it is, there's so much you can do for yourself. You can take yourself so far, but
Mhm.
really, there's a relational component that I think is the crux of it.
Yeah, and you spoke to that earlier too, of starting to identify these symptoms in your body, knowing the things, right? And you were like, oh my gosh, I can't see this. I see this pattern all the time in my clients, but I can't see that in mine. And yeah, and there's something about that, I don't know if you were on the call with Kelly recently when we were talking about our experience in St. Croix of getting towed in. But
No,
oh,
no.
okay. I'll share really quickly because it's just this beautiful. So, I'm still going through my recovery in my surgery, and my boyfriend who was there, he's a big, strong man, and he was going to be in my kayak with me. But there was another woman who, Jen, she was like, I haven't really kayaked before. I was like, you know what? Go with Flo. He's going to take care of you. And Kelly was like, I got you, girl. We're strong women. We got this. But halfway through, we were kayaking out to the bay and an old injury got inflamed. And so, and my little arms were burning and my core was like, still recovering from this. And I was like, oh my God, we're not going to make it. And it's a dark, we're going to the bioluminescence. And we're like, where's the rest of the group? Oh my God. And we finally get there and we're there. And I said, you know what, Kelly, we're getting towed in today. And we're like you, like we're strong women. We've been pushing. We know how to do this. Like we know we're capable of it. But I was like, yeah, we're capable of it, but like we're both gonna hurt in the end. And that's just like sore, but like let's just get towed in. And so we got
Yeah.
towed in, and she wrote a beautiful blog post this past week
Oh,
about it. But there's something quite beautiful too in the wounded healer of that surrender and
yes.
saying, you know what, I don't have to figure this out alone. I need the coach, I need the healer, I need the therapist or whatever that is, that support system that can see another point of view or just the physical labor of someone towing you in, right?
Right.
We need each other. And that's what I think I'm hearing over and over again, more of us who are healers and who, like I've said over and over again, like we're the leaders of this new paradigm. We have to also release that pressure that we're not here to do it all alone,
Mhm.
right? We can't do it all alone and we shouldn't do it all alone. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's why community is so important, isn't it?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So I'd love to hear more, speaking of community, about your community. Like what, so it sounds like what up until now what you're talking is like you're working one-on-one with people in these different modalities that you have. But I also know because you're at the nOMad Collective and you host retreats, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what does that look like working with one-on-one and then moving into a group experience like a retreat
hmm
and the
So I
community.
do have a couple of group programs as
Yeah.
well. And so
Yes.
from those, I do have shorter retreats that normally people that have done my programs come to.
Yeah.
And then of course I've got a retreat in Bali in September, which I'm really excited
I'm
about.
so excited for you.
And so yeah, on my retreats, I'm quite fluid and flexible. So I normally have like this outline and a theme, and then I design a program. But I normally am guided by whoever is on my retreat and the energy of the retreat at the time. So quite often, if people are feeling really tired because, I don't know, we've had a busy day the day before, or maybe people haven't slept well, or they've stayed up talking, or whatever, I might say, okay, how are we fixed for movement in the morning? Do we want to get up at 7 or do we want to start it at 9 and do a shorter, the next activity or whatever? So I try and bring in the combination of things. Movement is really important to me. So even if we do mindful walking, I'm all for getting outside and moving the body. But of
Mhm.
course, Bali, we're going to be having different types of yoga. So we're using a Balinese yoga teacher, and then I'm going to be tr doing transpersonal yoga, which is really exciting. And so it really depends on what the theme of the retreat is as to how it, how it transpires. But I normally bring in some of the archetypes. So working with, an archetype that fits with the theme. And of course, Bali is called Rise, and it's about leaders and leadership. So whether that's leading yourself or leading other people, whether you already identify as a leader or whether you're just stepping into that role, or there's a seed inside of you waiting to grow and to be nurtured so that you can really kind of step out into yourself and lead yourself. So we'll be working with that archetype for sure. And then a few of the other ones that I'm not going to mention yet because it's a
It's
surprise.
a surprise, and you might, yeah, something might shift, right? You
Yeah, right.
remember.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and I actually I meant to go back because you said something too, and we just drove through it, is that you have programs in between. And so I would love to hear, yeah, what does that journey look like? So someone comes to, works one-on-one, and then you create this sense of community in your program for them to want to eventually go on the retreat with you and have that experience. Like when you're talking about that retreat rise, right? It's somebody who sees them as a leader or stepping into their leadership. Like, what does that journey look like for them to realize, oh, this is the experience that I'm ready for with Claire?
Yeah, I think it's different for different people depending on where they're at, really.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to sort of, I mean, I've got a little group that comes on my retreat in the UK, weekend retreat, every year in October. And it's just kind of like getting together with old friends,
Mm,
that familiar community
yeah.
where we can all be ourselves and we don't need to try and we don't have to put on pretenses. Um, so there's that side of it. And then, of course, I think when you've got a longer retreat that's themed, I have people coming this year that I don't know that I must say that I'm doing it. I'm co-hosting it with my friend Emma from Australia. So there are some people that have been clients of hers that are coming. And so I think that's quite a difficult thing to answer because obviously this one is about leading. So it's people that do want to have more self-confidence. It's people that do want to own their gifts. It's people that do want to be able to use their authentic voice to actually step up and to be seen.
Yeah. So they don't necessarily need to have worked with you already.
No,
It sounds like that you are
yeah, yeah.
opening the doors to all
Yeah,
possibilities.
yeah, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely. Because,
Yeah.
I work with people one-to-one that don't do my courses.
Yeah.
So it's not a natural progression at all. It's very, everything's open to everyone basically, but sometimes people do progress that way.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to know for people who are out there listening and going, "Ooh, I want to work with Claire." And what does that look like, right there? But there's so many shapes and spaces that you hold for people so they can find out where they land in your ecosystem, which is
Yeah.
beautiful. And oh, I love Bali. Oh, I'm so excited for you and your leaders. That's gonna be amazing. And I think that there's still a spot left at the time of this recording, right?
Yes, we've got one room left. Yeah, which can be bought for single use, or if you want to come with a friend, bring a friend and you can share it. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Oh, and there was something else. Hold on. You said something and I was like, oh, wait, I want to touch on that. Oh, the schedule, the flow of the schedule. And I'm curious to know because I will admit, it's taken me a little while to allow that fluidity that you just spoke to so graciously of, oh, let's see, do they want to start at 7 or do they want to start at 9? I will admit I used to not be like that. That was like, this is my schedule. So
Yeah.
have you always been like that? Have
Yeah.
you always just like been
Yeah.
very like, let's go with the flow and see how,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
good for you.
Yeah. I think because one of my core values is freedom. So
Hmm.
I don't like feeling really constrained. And I
Hmm.
think because of having gone through that period where I was really fatigued, I would literally get out of bed. And by the time I drove the 3 miles to the place that I was working twice a week, I'd want to go back to bed.
Hmm.
And I think that has helped me to shift the way that I sometimes approach things. So
Hmm.
even my morning routine. So I have a routine, but it's
Mhm.
quite fluid. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'll, get up at 6, sometimes I'll get up at 7. And, I know that I'll go and walk the dogs or take them for a little run, but that time will change. And also whether I walk or run will change depending on how I feel. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's been a really big learning for me from not being well, because before that I would have been like, right, 9 o'clock we're doing this, 10 o'clock we're doing this.
Okay. Yeah. That's
So
what I was curious
yeah,
about because you were so disciplined in your
yeah,
physical practice. And
right.
then to be this space holder, we were like, oh, when are you going to get up? Like, okay. And that's what it was the
Yeah.
journey that
So
you're on. Because
yeah,
same thing for me too,
yeah,
with being
yeah,
a disciplined dancer for so many
right.
years. It's like, no, you go to class
Hmm.
8 a.m. or whatever. So yeah, I had that background too. And I was like, I wonder how she got there.
Yeah. No, I was definitely like that in my work,
Yeah.
100%. And
Yeah.
but now definitely not on retreats, not so
Yeah.
much.
No, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. And that's good for anybody out there who's listening, like, oh, I want to work with Claire and oh, I want to go to Bali. And can we tease the other one?
Yeah. So we've got another one that's about to launch, hopefully at the end of next month. And that's going to be in Thailand.
Yes. I just got chills for
And
you.
I'm super excited for this one as well because it's near Khao Lak, which is a really beautiful, quiet place, and beautiful beaches, like really, really gorgeous white sands. And the place that we've got is really private and it's just so beautiful. So,
That's so beautiful.
yeah.
And is there a theme related to that one? Just so we can.
There is. It's
Okay.
it's going to be called Restore,
Okay.
and it's all about, coming back to yourself, coming back to your body,
Mm,
giving yourself permission to pause, giving yourself permission to heal really with space. So we're going to be having a combination of different modalities like, movement and breath work, and we've got some really cool excursions planned that fit that theme as well.
mm.
So yeah, super excited about that one.
I love that. And I love how because I love this too, of weaving in the excursions through the theme so
Hmm.
that they feel very organic and they're part of
Yeah,
the scene.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
we're gonna be working with the elements as well in Thailand.
beautiful.
So and that fits really well as well. So
Yeah. Oh, that's so wonderful. I love it. I just want to go on everybody's retreat.
I know, right?
Like, wait, when do I get to go to Thailand with Claire? When do I go to Alaska with Teresa? And like, yeah, I need to clear my schedule and stop teaching you guys and just go on your retreat.
Right.
Oh my goodness, Claire, I had loved this conversation. Is there anywhere that we didn't explore that you want to explore here today?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
so, and then, we touched on the space in between, but this podcast is called The Space in Between. And you talked a little bit about your journey of that space in between, but where right now are you in that space in between? What does that mean for you right now in this season?
Oh, where am I? Yeah. I feel like I feel like at the moment I'm pretty kind of centered and grounded, and that I never want to say that I've kind of arrived where I'm meant to be because I'm still going. In fact, I've just started to study psychotherapy. So yeah, it's something that I've been thinking about, and I've been being nudged by the universe for a few years, and I kept going, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to. But I've started that, and I know that's going to be life changing. I know that's going to be amazing. So that is still my journey. I'm still unfolding, and I don't know where that's going to lead me, but I think it's just going to deepen the way that I hold space and support clients. And I'd love to just go more into the retreat aspect of what I do because I love bringing people together. It's so special. I mean, the things that happen when people come together, you just don't get that when people are, you know, on screens, and screens are great. It's super helpful to, for us when we're across the across the ocean and, different time zones and everything. But that in-person thing away from everyday life, when all you have to do is focus on yourself and you're being held by somebody. You don't have to worry about planning your meals. You don't have to worry about what you're going to do. And you have the freedom to say, you know what? I don't think I fancy doing that at the moment. Do you mind if I sit it out? I think there's so much freedom in that. And for me, that's magic, seeing how people come to retreat and then seeing how they leave retreat. And you're
Mhm.
like, wow, that happened in this short space of time.
Yeah, it's so magical.
Yeah,
And then just and then the integration calls too that
right.
come and see, oh my gosh, they actually, because there's something about the magic of being there, but then for them to be able to take things home and
Hmm.
integrate them and have those shifts that happen, so that could potentially happen so quickly,
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
I
yeah,
get,
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, that's where I'd like to go. I'm not sure what that looks like yet, so watch this space.
Yeah, watch the space, watch Claire. Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Claire. And we will have all of Claire's links in the show notes. So if you want to follow Claire, there'll be a link there in your social media. And you can always join us at the nOMad Collective. And we have a beautiful page about Claire and your retreats. Hopefully, we'll have Thailand up by the time this launches, maybe, maybe not. And you'll be part of our retreat, our virtual retreat, Passport
Hmm.
Ready
Yeah,
December preset. So we
yeah,
haven't really talked much about that yet, but
I'm excited.
do you have any idea what session you're going to be hosting yet? And it's okay if
Well,
you don't know.
might be something to do with archetypes. I don't know.
Oh, I like it. Yes,
Yeah,
please
I
do
have
that.
an
I'll jump in.
idea. I have a little I have a seed. So
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, everybody, if you're hearing this and it's before May 28th, join us and keep looking out for the last spot in Claire's Bali retreat and the Thailand retreat that's being announced any moment now. And yeah, thank you so much, Claire.
thank you, thank you, thank you.